The St. Francis Dam collapse. Los Angeles's forgotten disaster. The St. Francis Dam collapse is one of the most haunting and overlooked tragedies in American history. When it opened in 1926, the dam was hailed as a modern marvel of engineering. But just 2 years later, it became the stage for one of the deadliest disasters ever to strike California. Shortly before midnight on March 12, 1928, the quiet stillness of San Francisquito Canyon was shattered. The earth trembled, houses shook, and windows rattled in the dark. Chester Smith, a local rancher, awoke to the sound of cracking timber and snapping utility poles echoing through the night. At first, many thought it was an earthquake, but Smith knew better. Having once survived a flood, he recognized the sound of rushing doom. Racing barefoot to higher ground, he shouted a chilling warning to his family. "The dam is broke!" 3 miles upstream, the unthinkable had happened. The massive St. Francis Dam, towering 208 feet high, had suddenly collapsed. A roaring wall of water, 10 stories tall, thundered through the canyon. In its path lay the sleeping residents of the Santa Clara River Valley. Within minutes, nearly 52 million tons of water were unleashed, sweeping away everything: homes, farms, bridges, and lives. By dawn, hundreds were dead, marking the event as the 20th century's deadliest civil engineering disaster. William Mulholland and Los Angeles's thirst for water. The collapse of the St. Francis Dam cannot be understood without the story of the man behind it, William Mulholland. In the early 1900s, Los Angeles was booming. The California sun drew thousands of newcomers, and the city's population exploded from just over 100,000 in 1900 to more than 1 million by the 1920s. But there was one problem: water. Mulholland, the self-taught chief engineer of Los Angeles's water system, had already transformed the city by building the Los Angeles Aqueduct in 1913. Stretching more than 230 miles, it diverted water from the Owens Valley to quench the city's thirst. Yet even the aqueduct could not keep pace with Los Angeles's relentless growth, especially during a devastating 7-year drought. Determined to secure the city's future, Mulholland designed a network of reservoirs. The crown jewel was the St. Francis Dam, constructed just 47 miles from downtown Los Angeles. Completed in May 1926, it stood as a symbol of progress, holding back more than 12 billion gallons of water, enough to supply the entire city for a year. But beneath its concrete surface, hidden flaws were waiting to reveal themselves in the most catastrophic way possible. The St. Francis Dam starts leaking. By early March 1928, heavy winter rains pushed the St. Francis Dam reservoir to full capacity. William Mulholland, ever confident in his creation, ordered a halt to irrigation, believing this move would save the city millions. But beneath the surface of this great reservoir, something sinister was beginning to stir. On the morning of March 12th, dam keeper Tony Harnischfeger noticed something that filled him with dread. A large leak on the western side of the structure, spilling not clear water, but muddy water. A telltale sign that the very foundation of the dam might be eroding. Alarmed, he reported it at once. Mulholland himself rushed to the site. For 2 hours, he walked the length of the towering wall of concrete, examining its surface. In the end, he dismissed the muddy flow as nothing more than runoff from nearby road construction. To Mulholland, the leak was unremarkable. But to history, it was the final warning sign that no one heeded. That same day, rancher Chester Smith noticed the dam again. He saw water splashing over the western edge and the widening leak that Mulholland had waved away. Uneasy, Smith bedded down in his barn that night with the doors open, ready to flee at the first sound of disaster. A deadly torrent is unleashed. Disaster came swiftly. At 11:58 p.m., the St. Francis Dam collapsed with no warning. The massive concrete wall shattered into ruin, releasing a black wall of water 140 feet high. Moving at nearly 18 miles per hour, the wave tore through San Francisquito Canyon like a living monster. Houses splintered. Orchards were uprooted. Railroad tracks bent and twisted as if they were toys. The torrent thundered forward, carrying with it millions of tons of water, debris, and death. The first to die were those closest to the dam. Harnischweger, his girlfriend, and his 6-year-old son. Swept away so completely that the father and child were never found. Downstream, the flood annihilated a powerhouse, killing 65 workers and their families. 84 more men, Southern California Edison employees asleep in their tents, were swallowed by the current. Migrant laborers picking fruit in the valley never had a chance to escape. The flood was merciless. Victims were stripped of clothing, battered, and carried miles downstream. Bodies surfaced weeks later in the mud and debris, some found as far away as the shores near San Diego. By the time the torrent finally reached the Pacific Ocean at dawn, more than 400 lives had been lost. Some historians believe the true toll may be even higher, hidden forever in the ocean's depths. The St. Francis Dam collapse remains one of the most chilling and deadly engineering failures in American history. A disaster that arrived in silence, struck with unimaginable force, and left a scar on California that can never be erased. Mulholland's fall. Just 9 days after the St. Francis Dam collapse, the coroner's inquest began. A somber William Mulholland took the stand, his voice heavy with grief. "This inquiry is a very painful thing for me to have to attend, but it is the occasion of it that is painful," he said. "The only ones I envy about this thing are the ones who are dead." The city's most celebrated engineer testified that he had seen no sign, no warning, that the dam would fail. Yet before him lay the consequences of his decisions. Hundreds of lives lost, entire communities destroyed, and the greatest failure of his career. The inquest cleared Mulholland of criminal wrongdoing, but the verdict carried a haunting judgment. The construction and operation of a great dam should never be left to the sole judgment of one man, no matter how eminent, without check by independent expert authority. A commission appointed by California Governor C.C. Young uncovered the fatal truth. The western abutment of the dam rested on weak conglomerate rock, incapable of supporting such a massive structure. Water had seeped into the foundation, slowly lifting the dam until collapse was inevitable. Other flaws were revealed. Mulholland had raised the dam's height from 180 to 208 feet without widening its base, while the eastern abutment unknowingly sat atop an ancient landslide that reactivated under pressure. As historian William Mulholland later explained, the geologic structures on either side of the dam were different, and that created the tragic potential for failure. Mulholland was at the apex of his fame, power, and authority. There were not nearly enough checks and balances in place to ensure the quality and safety of the dam. For Mulholland, the disaster was a personal ruin. The man who had once been hailed as the savior of Los Angeles water supply would never build again. His name, once synonymous with progress, became forever tied to tragedy. The disaster site today. Nearly a century has passed, yet the scars of the St. Francis Dam collapse still remain. In San Francisquito Canyon, jagged fragments of concrete, some weighing more than 10,000 tons, still lie scattered, carried downstream by the fury of the flood. These remnants stand like silent tombstones of a forgotten disaster. Visitors today can find memorials and historical markers in the canyon, reminders of the night when Los Angeles's great dream turned to horror. The land looks peaceful now, but the broken ruins whisper of the dangers ignored, the warnings dismissed, and the terrible cost of unchecked ambition. The St. Francis Dam collapse remains one of America's deadliest civil engineering failures, a tragedy that reshaped California's history, ended Mulholland's career, and serves as a haunting reminder that nature, when defied, always claims its due. A memorial for the forgotten. Unlike the Johnstown flood or other infamous tragedies, the St. Francis Dam collapse never found the same place in America's collective memory. For decades, it remained a forgotten disaster, overshadowed by Los Angeles's rapid growth and ambition. But nearly a century later, recognition has finally begun to take shape. In 2019, the federal government designated the St. Francis Dam Disaster National Memorial and Monument, a 353-acre site managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Plans for the memorial are ambitious. A 50-foot-tall sculpture, a visitor center, a museum, a memorial garden, and a wall inscribed with the names of the victims. Supporters hope it will finally give this catastrophe the remembrance it deserves, honoring the hundreds who perished that night when the dam gave way. The ruins of San Francisquito Canyon remain a silent reminder of the disaster. Their jagged concrete fragments a warning from history about the cost of unchecked ambition, human error, and forgotten voices. The St. Francis Dam collapse is not just a story of engineering failure. It is a haunting tale of lives lost, lessons ignored, and the fragile line between progress and tragedy. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to History Love, and share it with others who are fascinated by the mysteries of the past. History Love is your go-to YouTube channel for exploring the forgotten, the tragic, and the remarkable stories that shaped our world.